Hi, welcome back to the Mobilised Physiotherapy Clinic. This is the final video in our neck mobility series. In this video, we'll be looking at maintaining your neck mobility and then some ideas for rehabilitation, for strengthening of the muscles around your neck. So, let's go. Let's get you mobilised. I'd like to introduce you now to something that I call the principles of maintenance. If you're maintaining your body, your mobility, then there needs to be a set of guidelines, a set of principles in order for you to make sure you're doing it effectively. So there's three basic fundamental rules for the principles of maintenance. The first one is that frequency is much more important than duration. Let's take the example of a Ferrari. You're driving around a Ferrari and you're driving it around for 5 years. If you only have it serviced once in that time for a period of 3 days, then it's never going to work at its optimum. You need to have it serviced regularly, every 6 months, or how often Ferrari recommend, I have no idea. Your body is exactly the same. If you're using your body regularly, which you are, then you need to service it regularly. You need to maintain it regularly. If you do something to maintain your body for 10 seconds, 10 times a day, that's much more important and much more effective than if you were to do that one thing for 10 minutes, just once a day. So frequency, much more important than duration. The second rule in the principles of maintenance is that your free time is your fun time. Now, I've talked regularly about the 24-hour period of the day and how you should focus on the right third. And I believe that those 8 hours that you have free, you have to sleep for 8 hours, and most people have to work for 8 hours, so that's 16 hours gone. That leaves you 8 hours of your daily life that is your free time, your fun time. And within that, you have to fit in your maintenance of your body. So I have no interest in sending you away and telling you to do your physio exercises for 10 minutes of every day. I would much rather that we find a way for you during normal activities of daily living to do something for 10 seconds that's going to gradually build up your mobility and maintain it, and then help you to rehabilitate it. The third rule is that compensation is the key. Every moment from when you wake up to the moment you go back to sleep, your muscles are working, your joints are moving. Now, this is good because it's all mobility. However, every time your muscles contract, they leave this microscopic amount of tightness in your muscles. So gradually, over time, over days, hours, weeks, months, years, decades, your body is tightening up. That's what we need to focus on. That's what we need to maintain. So compensation is key. Every time you do something, you need to undo the effect that it has on your muscles so that you return your muscles to the state they were in before you began doing it. When you're looking at rehabilitating a muscle or a group of muscles, there's a conditioning phase that you need to go through. Now, there's generally 3 of these conditioning phases. There's the initial conditioning phase, which is where you're beginning. This is why we always tell you to take things slowly, to build up. Maybe do things once a day to start with, and then build up by adding one more time in each day until you're doing it 10 times a day. Secondly is the development conditioning phase. This is where you're making your gains. This is where the muscle or muscles are really growing in strength, growing in their ability to mobilize and move the joints. Once you've completed that phase, then you move on to the maintenance conditioning phase. And this is really where you're running on full steam, you're maintaining your ability. These phases, the first one, initial conditioning, may last 6 weeks. The second phase may be anywhere from 6 weeks up to a couple of months. And then, of course, the maintenance phase, both maintaining your conditioning, your level of conditioning, your ability to keep moving over periods of time, and also maintenance of mobility, that's ongoing. You're doing that for the rest of your life. So far, through this course of videos, we've looked at the anatomy involved. We've looked at how to assess the anatomy and the mobility of that anatomy. we've looked at how to treat any aches and pains that you're finding with movement of that anatomy. And then we've also looked at rehabilitation and maintenance of the mobility of that anatomy. Now, in order to progress that, we're looking at 5 different things, what we call the 5 R's. The only difference between a mobility exercise and a strengthening exercise is that one is done slowly and under control to affect the mobility of the joints, and the strengthening exercise is made harder. So in order to make things harder, we use these 5 R's. You'll always forget one. I always do. Let's see how I get on. We've got the first R, which is resistance. Resistance is adding some strength to a movement. So if you're resisting a movement to the side and you push against it, that will make it harder. The second one is range of movement. So if you move a joint through a larger range of movement, that will challenge it. If your joint is limited, then trying to increase the range of movement is a definite progression. The third one is rate. This is the speed at which you perform a movement. Now, mobility exercises should always be done under control at a regulated speed. Some strength exercises may be done at a higher speed in order to increase the power. Power is strength plus speed. Your stretches should always be done with 0 speed, so there's no movement involved in a stretch. The fourth R is, I told you I'd forget one, repetition. So this is the amount of times that you repeat something. As I've said many times, 10 times a day for just 10 seconds is much better than once a day for 10 minutes. So repetition, the more you repeat a mobility exercise, the more mobility it will bring you. And the last R, where are we? Repetition, range, rate, resistance, and the last one is rest. The more rest you have, the easier something will become. This is important. If you're mobilizing an area which is tender, it's really important to start off with plenty of rest. Never push yourself too hard. So rest can be reduced to make something harder for strengthening and endurance. It can also be used to ease the tension in between repetitive mobility or strengthening or stretching exercises. So there you have it, the 5 R's. Once more, resistance, repetition, range of movement, rate and rest. So let's put those into practice. Looking at some of the mobility exercises we've looked at before, you'll remember this one. This is typicocervical flexion going into full cervical flexion. Now, in a vertical position, you're moving downwards with gravity. So there's no resistance to the muscles on the front of the neck. You have to be lying on your back, raising upwards against gravity to apply resistance to make this a rehabilitation exercise. Initially, with this movement, we're looking at just mobilizing that typicocervical joint right at the top of the neck. However, if you then move that to pulling in the chin and going into a full cervical flexion movement, that helps to strengthen all of these muscles down the front of the neck, which will help to take the strain off the muscles on the back of your neck that you normally use for cervical flexion. So well worth doing just this one exercise for 10 seconds, 10 times a day. And just focus on keeping that chin pulled in so that when you lift your head just an inch off the surface you're lying on, you're making sure to just use those cervical flexor muscles. Taking the stretches we've done before, you remember this stretch, that's the stretch for your fibers of trapezius across the top of your shoulder there. Normally we'd hold a stretch in place for 30 seconds. If, however, you apply some resistance with your hand to any stretch, you can make this a rehabilitation strengthening exercise for those same muscles. You can do this for any of the muscles around the neck. You can do it for the muscles on the side. You can do it for the muscles in the back of your neck and on the front of your neck as well. You remember the mobility exercise that we did with a towel around your neck, finding the bony landmarks on your neck, placing the towel on that landmark and using your hands to create tension in the towel. You've done this for headaches and for mobilizing the joints throughout your neck. you can now use that same exercise to rehabilitate the muscles down the back of the neck. As well as using your hands and the towel, you can also use one of these. This is a stretchy band, and one of the brands you can buy is a TheraBand. I've used a blue one. Generally, the lighter the colour of the band, the easier it is to stretch. So yellow is normally the lightest, the weakest band, so that's the place to start. Please be careful, it is elastic. If you let go, it will spring back. Most importantly, of course, whenever you're doing an exercise that you're aiming to use for rehabilitation or strengthening, you must apply the 5 R's. Always use these 5 R's, progress them one at a time so that you're gradually increasing the intensity of what you're doing and taking those small steps towards your end goal of mobility and regaining the mobility of your youth. Regularly, you need to use one of these. Make sure that you're insulated with a towel or something to prevent any risk of burning your skin. Hold one of these onto your skin for at the minimum 20 minutes. You can never overdo it. So long as it's warmth, that's never at risk of causing any burning, then you're absolutely safe to keep this on as long as it feels good. There you are. Everything that you need to know in order to rehabilitate and maintain your neck mobility. Please make sure you subscribe to this channel and keep up to date with the videos for the other areas of the body, and make sure you leave us a comment below so that we can learn from you. We're always looking to update and improve so that we can give you exactly what you're looking for. Let's go. Let's get you mobilized.